Welcome into the Monday edition of the 14. Hope everyone had a wonderful Easter weekend. I think it was a wonderful weekend for sports. No SEC teams in the Final Four, but certainly a very compelling game on Saturday night. SEC baseball action, always interesting as it was again this weekend too. Welcome back into the show. Hope you had a great weekend. Let's start with basketball. And I know this is an SEC show, but my goodness, the Gonzaga game was just amazing.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was interesting. You know, the one we've been looking forward to the most was the one we're going to get on Monday night. But, man, I mean, maybe it can still be a great game, and I think it will be. But I don't know how it's going to match that Gonzaga-UCLA game from Saturday. That was something else. Just the drama and the storyline, the setup, it had it all. And just to think that, I think I saw the stat. It was from Heat Check CBB. Was the stat? I think it was for 43 minutes and 51 seconds of that 45-minute game, plus the 5-minute overtime, of course. There, it was no more than I think a 2-score game. So it stayed close the entire way, and it was something else. And yeah, I mean, if you're an Arkansas fan, you're probably rooting for Baylor tonight in the national championship, just to kind of have a little, hey, we lost to the national champions. But I'm not sure. I think it's going to be a great game. But man, you have to wonder, what is Gonzaga going to be able to just completely refocus that quickly based on the emotional and physical demands of that game they played on Saturday night?
Was that a top 5 game of all time?
It's one of the best games I've ever seen. I mean, and that's again, that's just me personally, but that's one of the best Final Four games in history. That's one of the best NCAA tournament games in history. And so if you tie all that together, it has to be one of the best games we've ever seen. And that's what I said. And personal opinions different. We can all look at a game differently, but if you watch basketball, I don't know how you could say that wasn't a fantastic game. And like I said, the stats sort of support that in how close that game was, pretty much the entire game. It was never one where the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, okay, Gonzaga's going to make their run. They never made their run. UCLA had an answer every single time that Gonzaga was about to seemingly set things off and maybe pushes things up, to double digits or something like that. UCLA had an answer every time, and that's not exaggerating. Every single time they had an answer. And so I think it was you build in everything. The setup of an undefeated team against a number 11 team that had no business being there. No one picked them to be there, as a team that was in one of the first 4 games. I think just the setup was as good as it gets. And then for the game to play out as it did, it has to be one of the best games we've seen.
So if we start the tournament over from scratch today and seed the field, take the same teams that made it, and reseed them, what's UCLA now, a 3?
I think they're at least a 3.
Yeah, maybe even a 2.
Well, because I think that's something, and we have to remember too. They were picked to win that conference. They were picked to win the Pac-12, but it's just one of those things where they just could not. They had some bumps in the road along the way, obviously. Different things, and I think that the thing that just fascinates me so much is, this team came into the NCAA tournament on a 4-game losing streak. And you just don't those are the teams you always bet against. All right, this team has no momentum, nothing going for them. How could they possibly do this? And by the way, they played 3 overtime games in this stretch where they, Michigan State, and they have the one against Alabama, and then against Gonzaga. I don't know how they did it, because that's a team too that they're not that deep overall. Like we said, they're going to play their top guys a lot of minutes, and that's kind of what they did. And so I think that makes it even more impressive, the fact that they pretty much played 6 guys this whole way regularly. I mean, which you look at the Gonzaga game, there were basically 6 guys that played a lot of minutes. You had a couple guys 8 minutes, 5 minutes there, but it's just how did they do this? It's just one of those things about the NCAA tournament where I don't know how they did it, but it's crazy to think, though, isn't it, that it's seeming like Rick Barnes was one of the final candidates for that UCLA job. Obviously all reports and everything about the speculation there that he could take that job and all this. And so by the end of the time that they make a hire, it's Mick Cronin, and people are like, oh, well, that was their 3rd or 4th or 5th choice or whatever. Well, I mean, I think they're in good hands, because I thought he had the absolute perfect game plan to beat Gonzaga. It just was a matter of his guys had to execute it. They had to hit shots, and they did all that. So I don't think UCLA could have drew it up any better in terms of the game plan they had going into that game.
Has anybody's reputation grown in stature more than Mick Cronin just the last 2 weeks? Because I'm not going to say that he was like on the hot seat at UCLA, but I mean, they had a good year last year. They were 19-12. I mean, he did a good job, but I think there's always going to be some grumbling when you barely sneak into the tournament at NCAA. Between that and what's happened at Cincinnati, which is just fallen into a pit apparently.
Yeah.
You know, they've got a coach suspended and everything, that sort of thing. I mean, I would have to think that his star has risen a little bit this week. Not that anybody really pays attention probably doubted him, but the public can be fickle, and we look at what have you done for me lately, and I think Mick Cronin has really probably solidified his reputation, to say the least.
Well, and think about that. The reason why I think the whole Cincinnati thing and why people got so frustrated with him at Cincinnati was the NCAA tournament success. I want to say he had only made the Sweet 16 one time. I may be completely wrong on this, but I feel like he only made the Sweet 16 once while he was at Cincinnati. Like, they were one of those teams that sort of regularly had a good seed, but they got ousted early. They just were seemingly always on the wrong end of upsets. And I think that's one of the things. And isn't it so, like, again, you talk about just the craziness of it all. It's so crazy that was the reason why I think Cincinnati fans eventually got frustrated with them, even though they were winning, 25, 27, 28, 30 games, whatever. It was just because they did not have that success in the actual tournament. And now, in his first official year of having an opportunity to play in the tournament at UCLA, he gets his team all the way to the Final Four and nearly knocks off, probably one of the best teams we've seen. So it's funny how things work out. But he, like you said, I mean, my goodness. And I thought too, one of the things I pointed out after the game, he did the post-game interview with CBS or whatever, and just the way he put it was like, he's like, we did everything we could. And he said, there's no reason, or I don't remember exactly what he said, but something about, we're right where we need to be. Like, it was one of those things where we can't be disappointed. Obviously, we want to win and all this other stuff, but my goodness, like, my guys. And I'm thinking, if I'm a player out there watching that interview and I'm trying to find a school to go play for, like, he's jumping up. Like, I want to go play for Mick Cronin after that interview because he said all the right things, and I just thought it was really impressive. But yeah, his stock definitely on the upswing.
So I happened upon my bracket challenge picks, which I just didn't even bother to check after the first half of the first day where I had a good start, and then it just all, like I said earlier, fell into a pit. My bracket's at 75th percentile, which I'm not bragging. I'm just saying, because I'm not at any point of like, oh, if I look at this thing, I'm going to have to poke my eyes out, right? That's the kind of tournament it's been. Like, I wouldn't even check my bracket. And by the way, you're like a percentage point or two behind me. Yeah. And we both had Gonzaga winning. So anyway, I guess we can, I was going to say you can't say we can only go up from here because there's some people that have Baylor picked, whereas we had Gonzaga. But that just tells you what kind of tournament it is. So, like, I'm under the impression that my bracket is just horrid the whole time. And I'm like, hey, I guess it wasn't so bad.
Yeah, it's all about getting – and again, this is what people always say. It's all about getting the champion right. Like, 'cause if you can get the champion right, like, you're going to be in pretty good shape. And so, like you said, I think it was a no-brainer to make your pick before to have Gonzaga in there, which, I picked to win it. But I think the one thing I would have gone back on is I picked Illinois. And even at the time to get to the championship, I was like, yeah, I don't like this Midwest. Like, there's potential for turmoil in here somewhere. I should have just went with Baylor. Then I may have been knocked up a few points on there too. So
I'm looking at the bracket challenge. At ESPN, somebody named Grizzly Bear 10 is winning, which is not me, by the way. I wish it were.
That's not you. Yeah.
No, and he's got Baylor beating Gonzaga tonight.
Well, I could see it. Like, I think the emotional aspect is something to watch in this game. Is Gonzaga going to be able to refocus that quickly after being challenged like they've never been challenged before? That's what I'm curious about to see. If they come out hitting shots early, I think they're going to be fine. But if Baylor comes out and sort of smacks them in the mouth with Jared Butler and Davion Mitchell and those guys and gets out to a big lead, I don't know that even as good as Gonzaga is offensively, I feel like it's one of those where they may be so drained to the point to where I just Baylor's the kind of team that's going to attack, and they are going to be aggressive. They're going to be physical. Those are the kind of things I wonder about for Gonzaga based on just how quickly the time frame is for them to have to turn right around and play this national championship game, even though this is the game we've been waiting for all season long. So
our bracket is being won by 54 Daniel S1. I don't know if we know who that is, but he's at 99.9 percentile.
Look at that
for the whole thing.
We only get the smart people in our bracket challenge, but yeah, that's incredible. That's not bad. So, and he did have Gonzaga Baylor, and he did have Baylor Houston in the Final Four. I'm looking at his bracket now. So yeah, not too bad there.
No, it says his rank is 17K, so I guess he's still a little bit off the overall lead, but because I mean there's a couple million people that
I was gonna say it's
enter this
4.2 million probably. So I think I saw earlier. Yeah.
Well, hoop stuff. You had some movement in the transfer portal this weekend and some coaching changes. So let's get down to the SEC. I guess the big thing is Tennessee adds a big transfer and loses an assistant coach.
Yep, Desmond Oliver heading. He was, again, another one of those guys we mentioned. We talked about assistants that could be on the move. He is heading to East Tennessee State to be their new head coach. So Rick Barnes will have a little tweaking to do on his staff. Because, again, we know already that Kim English took the George Mason job. So now Desmond Oliver to ETSU. So those are two significant, losses to his staff in terms of guys that we talked about Kim English and recruiting wise and all that. But still, Tennessee seems to be being able to bring in players just fine because, yes, they did pick up Justin Powell, who, as we know, was at Auburn, didn't play much of the season, concussion issues, that kind of stuff. And however, he's headed to Tennessee, Louisville native. And I know that, there were lots of people wondering, does he wind up in Kentucky or a place like that? Well, he's headed to Tennessee, and that's, when you compare him or when you can kind of put him aside, Kennedy Chandler, guy like that coming in, 5-star freshman, I think that's going to be a pretty significant thing for Tennessee because, as we said, they're going to lose some guys, and they've got to, be in a position to where they've got to replace the production they're going to have, with those guys in particular leaving, with Springer and probably Johnson and, all the other guys we talked about. So I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on because I feel like adding Powell is just huge because this is something that they had to have to replace some of these guys. And we thought, we said we didn't know what Tennessee was going to look like next year. We still don't completely, but that's a good step in the right direction.
So other stuff in the transfer portal that caught your eye this weekend or coaching moves? Anything else of note?
Omar Payne, as we said, was transferring from Florida. He's at Illinois now. So
interesting.
Obviously, a nice landing spot for him based on the Illini there. Elsewhere, I know Missouri picked up, I would have to find it. They picked up a kid from Kansas State. I was talking about it was almost like a swap where Mark Smith went to Kansas State and Missouri picks up the kid from Kansas State. I don't know why I can't think of his name right now, but I will find that. But yeah, Missouri picked up, I think, a couple different kids that Missouri added, which, they needed, as we said, because Missouri lost some guys from the transfer portal too. So yeah, those are DeJuan Gordon. That's it from Kansas State. So they picked him up. So that's a nice addition there. They picked up a kid from Ball State too. So Missouri restocking the roster, knowing all the different guys they lost. Elsewhere, the portal just continues to turn. That's the best way to put it. So, just things continue to turn in the portal, and we'll see kind of what happens with some of these other guys and see where they wind up. So,
yeah, Missouri's roster is going to look entirely different next year, isn't it?
Yeah, they're going to have a different roster for sure. And that, that's one of those teams, like I said, it's not the same as Tennessee, but certainly it's different. Like it's just hard to gauge where Missouri's going to be at because you don't really know what that roster is going to look like with all the guys they've lost. So yeah, it's they're an interesting one, I think, to sort of keep an eye on.
Let's talk baseball. Man, I'm going to have a tough time when it comes to power rankings. I'm trying to put some together this week. It'll be Vandy and Arkansas in the top two spots, but my goodness, 3-7, it's almost like flip a coin anymore.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's just like we said, we talked about it before conference play started, and it was like, well, we feel like there's going to be some separation here, and you're going to know exactly, maybe where to place some of these teams. But I feel like it's only gotten harder trying to figure out, like you said, who's going to be maybe in that 3-7 spot to try to figure out the best way to place them. But I mean, you had some good games this weekend, just in terms of certainly you had some close games, and obviously I think Vanderbilt, continues doing what they're doing right now, and the pitching, everyone likes to certainly focus on that. But if you just watch them, it's just, I don't know, man. It's we again, that's nothing new, right? Like we talked about that going into the season. That was one of the main storylines, was just those two guys in particular with Rocker and Leiter, and then you look elsewhere. Some of these other teams are really, I don't know, like you said, it's kind of a mixture of, one day you feel good about this team, maybe at 3 or 4, and then the other day you want to put those. But that's a good problem to have too if you're the SEC, because like we said so many times, I mean, you've got enough teams that can kind of support those high rankings at times, just because you just got a lot of talented teams in this conference.
Vanderbilt has won its last 20 games against SEC teams away from home.
That's insane.
I mean, I don't know what the league record for that is, but my goodness, that's crazy. Now, look, the one that includes 15 in a row on the road. And I looked it up. The teams they played were lower half of the SEC teams, and their 2 road series so far, Missouri and LSU, that's who their wins are this year. So you got to go back. That means they won the last 9 games on the road in 2019. I looked it up. They played Kentucky and somebody else. It was, again, I think Alabama was in there. Again, lower part of the league teams, but my goodness, I mean, you can have a hiccup and lose one of those in baseball easily. It's just amazing what those guys are doing right now. I know I watched them this weekend. You watched some of them, but Jack Leiter, goes 4 hitless out of the gate, so he was over 20 hitless innings in a row, which again, that's nuts. We're kind of running out of things to say about them again.
Yeah, I was gonna say it, and you brought up like the point about it really doesn't even matter who you play. To have that kind of streak with that, getting to that number just in baseball is just, I mean, it your mind just like, how does that happen? Like you can be one of the best teams, in the country, which obviously they're ranked number 1, but it's still like, that's something to where when you can win that many on the road, knowing sort of the volatility sometimes when it comes to baseball, like just some games can certainly go your way, some things no matter how good you are. That's just, man, what a stat. And yeah, I mean, it's clear. And that's the thing is, like we said, in a 3-game series, a normal 3-game series, you're going to face those 2 guys on the mound, and it's just like, you have to do your best to try to figure that out. Knowing that, okay, maybe, I don't know, you get to that 3rd game, but it's like those first 2 games you just know are going to kind of be a challenge just based on those 2. So,
well, the weirdest thing about the weekend, the 2 teams that we had kind of written off were Missouri, which which won the series with A&M this weekend, even though I think it just got obliterated on Friday night. I think that was 16-2 from memory. So Missouri finally gets a couple of wins a series in the league for the first time all year. Didn't see that coming. I mean, 2 weekends ago, we thought A&M might have a puncher's chance of kind of breaking into that top half of the SEC. I think you have to wind that one back. Yeah, I mean, Missouri loses 16-2 on Friday and then wins the next 2, 8-2 and 7-3. So not even close in any of the games. So there's that. The other one was Auburn, which had just been horrid, goes up and wins a pitcher's duel at Arkansas, and then I think blows leads in each of the last 2 games to lose the series, but didn't see that one coming either.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know a lot of people after that game on Thursday night were thinking, oh man, like, is this sort of that spot where maybe Auburn is able to turn it around after whatever, I think they had lost, 6 in a row, I think, to that point. It had been a struggle for them. But Yeah, two really close games on Friday and Saturday, and yeah, I mean, you guys had talked about it. Was you just didn't really think you were going to get much out of that series in terms of the way Auburn had been playing, and you kind of knew the trajectory of Arkansas, and yeah, it turned out actually to be, arguably maybe not the best or one of the best series of the weekend without question, just based on how those games played out. So I don't know, it's interesting because Auburn, I think next they've got Mississippi State. Then they go to Alabama after that. So I don't know. Maybe they can build off of something like that. But as we've said, still finding wins probably going to be easier said than done.
Well, the thing that we worried about preseason, you would see 11, sometimes 12 teams projected into the NCAA's field of 64 by the prognosticators. Well, the thing that I was always worried about is that there's the sum of all wins, it's 500, right? So every time somebody wins, somebody's got to lose. And I just wondered, are these teams going to be able to string together enough wins at the bottom, especially if you have a dominant team like a Vandy or Arkansas, like those teams are playing at right now, that makes it a little bit harder. Right now, I think if they pick the field today, the league gets 8, maybe 9, depending on what you do with Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky's toughest ball is ahead, like we've said all year. The first tough series the Wildcats play was going to Mississippi State this weekend, and they got swept. But, they lost a couple of, I guess, a 1-run game and a 2-run game, or was it 2 1-run games, whatever it was. Kentucky was at least competitive at Starkville, and sometimes I look at that more than I look at did you win or did you lose? But that's what I'm worried about, especially, and I'm looking at you, LSU, now that you're 1-8. A&M after losing the Missouri series, I think A&M would have been in the tournament heading into this weekend. Right now, it's tough at 3-6, and with the horrible series loss at Missouri, LSU's 1-8, and Jaden Hill is, I'm guessing, going to be gone a while. I guess we'll find out more today, but didn't look good when he came out of the game with a apparent arm injury. Maybe that's the start of something for Auburn this weekend, the way they played at Arkansas, but 1-8 in the league. Again, you got a mountain to climb there. So I'm starting to worry. Alabama kind of the wild card. I think Alabama's played better than the record and had some guys hurt. But again, Crimson Tide's 2-7. And even Georgia, I would include Georgia in that bunch that should get in the tournament. But the Bulldogs 3-6 and heading to Nashville to play Vandy this weekend. I think all of a sudden this is becoming a problem where I think these teams in the lower half of the league, Blake, may just have enough trouble finding enough wins. And maybe the NCAA says, hey, we're going to let an 11-19 team in the tournament. I don't know how they'll handle it, but I'm looking at the bottom part of the league and thinking this is going to be really problematic for the league getting the number of bids that we thought it might get.
Yeah, I was going to bring up LSU. I mean, you talked about them, and man, it's 1-8. Then they go to Kentucky for 3 games this weekend. Then I think they come back for South Carolina. Then it's at Ole Miss, Arkansas. It's like I think you're starting to look up at LSU and wonder, where are those wins going to come from? Obviously, a pretty big series for them, I'd say, at Kentucky, because as we've said, with Kentucky, maybe they're still one of those teams you don't really know what you're going to get because, they did lose a series the way they did, which not surprisingly at Mississippi State. But that all of a sudden has become just a massive series for LSU sitting there at 1-8 because the road after that not looking great. But yeah, like you mentioned, it's I don't know. I feel like this next week or two for sure. I mean, you just kind of, or these next 2 series maybe in particular for a lot of these teams, it may kind of decide the direction on what the NCAA tournament picture looks like.
Here's the crazy stat for LSU. LSU scored 27 runs in league games, which is 7 fewer than 13th place Missouri.
Yeah.
Did not see that coming.
No, that's just wild when you think about it. Yeah, again, because like we said with Kentucky, I know they just lost. But Kentucky could come out and sweep this series this weekend, and then all of a sudden LSU sitting there at 1-11. And then you go to, what was it, who, I can't remember who I said after that, but it's not easy. So it's just, I don't know. I feel like LSU, it has kind of reached that danger zone here now where if they don't pick up or at least get the series win, go get 2 or 3 at Kentucky, then you're kind of looking at it and wondering, the rest of the road is not going to be easy with South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Arkansas after that.
Well, and with LSU, granted, it has faced Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. Three really good pitching
Yeah.
staffs, although you can say that about, I guess, most of the league. But problematic is that two of its series losses have come at home. I really thought, and I went out on a limb, I thought LSU would beat Vandy this weekend.
Yeah.
I thought that if you get the right matchup out of Marceau, who's got a breaking ball, and sometimes that lineup has trouble with that. And I thought Sundays for Vanderbilt or game threes have just kind of been a crapshoot where they have really been off their game, even offensively. And that's the way it played out. LSU loses the finale 5-4 and had the go ahead or the tying run on third and the go ahead run on first in the bottom of the ninth, and just couldn't get the hit. But yeah, and with LSU in particular, that's one of those things that it seems like Paul Maneri is starting to feel the heat down there. The fans get restless in a hurry when you're not winning. It's been a while since they were, I guess, nationally dominant in terms of making a real run at the College World Series. And that's one of those that, again, if the luck goes a little differently to start the year, if you start the season with Missouri or somebody like that, you get some wins, you get some confidence, you win a one run game here or there. Maybe the outlook's different, but I think that's what you start looking for in the league is where does the start that some of these teams have had, and particularly LSU and Auburn, just start to kind of get the best of you, that you're so far underwater that it's hard to come up.
Yeah, it's not an easy league to make up ground in, like you said, because there's just so many. You're playing so many good teams, and it's just that there are only so many different series where you feel like, all right, we're going to come into this and feel confident enough about maybe getting at least 2 of 3. And like we said, for LSU at this point, I'm not sure you look at any series the rest of the way, outside of, I don't know, like even the ones against Auburn and teams like that, Alabama, like we said, who are teams that we're starting to feel like we can form an opinion on a little bit better. But I don't know, like it's, you're running out of opportunities here because you've still got so many good teams on the schedule. And so it's always, I feel like it's been like that for several years now, or many years. It's just like, if you kind of dig yourself a hole in some of these situations, it's really about the schedule. And do you have enough kind of wiggle room there to be able to make that up? Because if not, it can go south, in a hurry. And as we've said, I mean, we've kind of seen that with some of these teams thus far.
Blake, I know we'll do our baseball show tomorrow with Barry. Any parting thoughts? I know we haven't talked football this spring, which we're getting around to that. By the way, we will have a football-related guest on Wednesday's show. At least that's what we've got lined up. Any parting thoughts before we end this one? This will be just kind of a brief edition of the Monday.
Yeah, I did want to bring up certainly one thing I know that a lot of us were thinking about this weekend, and that was the passing of Luke Ratliff, who was the Alabama basketball superfan, or really just. I mean, this kid was, I don't know, he's just, I don't even know, I can't even describe it, like just one of the kindest people you'll talk to. His passion for Alabama sports and Alabama basketball specifically was just something else. And I think, I was sitting there, I can't even remember what night that was. It was that Friday night maybe. I was just kind of, on my phone, just looking at Twitter and such, and all of a sudden I just come across the tweets, and I'm thinking something's wrong, like something's not right here, and I'm like, what is going on? And then, of course, as I look a little bit more, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, and kind of saw the news. Yeah, it was, it's a tough one, man, because he's someone, obviously I've interacted with a lot just covering SEC basketball, and just knowing that he was kind of one of those guys, and we've said it for years, it's just like, with basketball, a lot of people, in the SEC, it's this love football and all this other stuff. You don't get a lot of sort of basketball super fans necessarily, and that's not to take away from any fans, period. But people who just love basketball so much and kind of support it. But I said something too about him. He was one of those people that I think just made college sports what it is, and the reason why we love it so much is he was a fan, in the right way. I mean, he traveled to all these different road games that Alabama did, and I brought up the thread that he had where he did a thread actually, literally 5 days ago, where I think it was after they had lost the game against UCLA, where he put a thread together on Twitter with just pictures, ticket stubs from all the games he attended this year. As a, he went to college there, 23 years old. And it's just like, I don't know, man. Like that one just hit me. Just interacting with lots of Alabama fans. As we said, we have a lot of Alabama people who listen to this podcast. It's awful just to kind of hear that news, and someone who had just been, again, just a ray of sunshine when you just talk to him, just a good person. And just, again, thoughts are with everyone there still. And I've talked to, different people, and I know it's been hard on them. It's been a hard weekend, and so I just wanted to bring that up before we wrapped up.
Yeah, I saw that too. I did not know him, but just heartbreaking. Our prayers with that family. Blake, anything else as we end the show today?
No, just like you said, check out everything over at southeastern14.com. We'll have obviously lots of stuff up over there as, again, we turn our attention to baseball and football, and obviously we'll have some more basketball stuff coming throughout the offseason. Of course, there's plenty happening, as we know. So check everything out over there, and, just follow us on Twitter at 14 Southeastern.
For Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee, the host of the 14. Again, we'll have 4 more episodes coming this week. Tuesdays, we'll feature Barry Allen. It'll be baseball-centric. Again, football-related podcast with some interesting topics. I'll just let that be a surprise that we'll get into on Wednesday. Of course, Thursday, we'll be back to baseball, and Friday, whatever's left over. But anyway, be sure to visit us at the 14, our website, southeastern14.com. Have some new features related to baseball coming up this week that I think will be cool. And, of course, we got daily content up there. We'll be back with the podcast on Tuesday again. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to that wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Lee, host of the 14. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again on Tuesday.